You ever have a friend go away for a bit and when they come back, they seem different? Not just, rested from a vacation, but like something fundamental has changed deep inside them? Well, today we're going to unpack a story just like that. How one woman's journey took her from feeling completely stuck and tired to finding this incredible sense of inner peace. And it all kicked off with a simple comment from a friend.
So just imagine this. Your friend Maya, someone you see all the time, comes back from a trip and you can just see it. Something has shifted. Her friend Elena says this to her and it's perfect, isn't it? It's like something inside you has softened. It's so much more than a vacation glow. It's a real, deep-down change.
And that right there is the million-dollar question, isn't it? What on earth happened to you? So that's what we're going to do. We're going to follow Maya's answer to that question and break down the exact steps she took on this incredible journey of transformation.
Okay, so before we get into the how she did it, let's start with the what. What was the actual result of this whole journey? What was this visible shift that her friend Elena spotted right away?
Now, this is so important. Maya makes it really clear that this wasn't about self-improvement, It wasn't about fixing her flaws or adding new habits. She says it felt like coming home to the person she already was, the person buried under all those layers of trying so hard. It was about reclaiming herself, not renovating herself.
Right, but a change this deep doesn't just happen on some week-long retreat. That's a fantasy. Maya is really quick to point out that the real, foundational work started months before she even thought about packing a bag.
And here it is. This is the roadmap for that early work. It was a really structured, three-part process. First, it started with something called a Gene Keys map, which is like a personal blueprint for seeing your own patterns. Then, she learned a set of foundational principles to guide her. And finally, she had one-on-one sessions to actually put it all into practice. Let's take a closer look.
So that first step was this Gene Keys map. And the way Maya talks about it is really interesting. It wasn't just a bunch of information or like a personality test. She said it was like a mirror that finally showed her the unconscious patterns she'd been running her whole life. And that self-awareness was absolutely crucial for everything that came next.
Now, for those one-on-one sessions, you might be thinking, oh, so it was therapy. But Maya says it was different. It wasn't about digging up and analyzing the past. She said it was more like having a guide walk right beside her as she learned totally new ways to navigate her life in the present moment. Basically, she was learning how to walk differently through her day-to-day.
Okay, so she's done all this prep work, right? She's got the self-awareness from the map, she's got the new practices from her sessions, and now we get to the main event, the retreat itself. This is where it all started to click.
And the whole purpose of this retreat can be summed up in one word: integration. It wasn't about cramming in more information. It was about finally letting all those intellectual insights she'd been learning truly sink in on a much, much deeper level.
And this right here, this is the absolute game changer. I mean, it's one thing to know something in your head, right? But it's a completely different thing to actually feel it in your body, in your bones. Maya says the retreat helped her embody the truth she'd been learning. It went from being just an idea to a lived reality.
So what's the result of all that? What happens when you finally embody these truths? For Maya, it was this newfound sense of inner steadiness, something she'd never really felt before. This wasn't some fleeting spiritual high. It was a core stability that she could now carry with her everywhere.
But the story doesn't end there. And honestly, this next part might be the most important piece of the whole puzzle. Because how do you take that incredible mountaintop experience and make it stick when you get back to the real world with bills and traffic and all of it? I just love this analogy Maya uses. She says, the retreat opened the door to a whole new way of being. But it was the integration work after the retreat that gave her the confidence and the tools to actually walk through that door and start living differently every single day.
So what does that actually look like in practice? Well, it's not some abstract thing. It's about weaving those big insights into the tiny moments of your day. It shows up in the way she started speaking to herself, with more kindness. It showed up in the boundaries she was finally able to set. And ultimately, it was about giving herself permission to live her own truth out loud.
And that brings us full circle. We started with what her friend saw on the outside. We walked through the whole process, and now we land on the internal reality of what it actually means to live a life you've reclaimed for yourself.
And here's her friend Elena again, just hitting the nail on the head. Like, you're not fighting yourself anymore. Just stop and think about that for a second. Can you imagine what that would feel like?
To have that constant internal battle just stop, that's the peace Maya found.
Maya really captures this whole thing with a powerful before and after of what she saw in the mirror. Before all this, the reflection looking back at her was, well, it was a very familiar sight.
It was the tired version, the one who was just exhausted from trying so hard to fix herself, from fighting herself, from trying to be the person she thought she should be. And I think that's a feeling a lot of us can probably relate to.
But after the journey, that tired woman was gone. And in her place was a woman who understood her own unique design and, this is the big one, had finally given herself permission to live it. She wasn't trying to squeeze into someone else's life anymore. She had finally fully stepped into her own.
And so, that's what this all boils down to. It's the question at the heart of Maya's story, and it's one we can all take with us. If you weren't fighting yourself, if all that energy you spend on self-criticism and that internal war was suddenly free, who would you be? What could you do? Definitely something to think about. Thanks so much for tuning in.